So this is our opportunity to have a discussion with the famous Graeme Axford. Plug for your book.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and I've written a book about it. Some of the things we may say might appear to some people to be way out there, well, it's in the book, and it's a matter of record.
We're going to discuss that in another interview we're going to do. But this is Mr. Gray. Mr. Gray is a victim of the infamous child, youth and family Oranga Tamariki. And maybe you want to give a bit of background to the viewers of your experience with the illustrious, famous child abuse ministry.
Yeah, right. In a nutshell, they grabbed a child they shouldn't have. They knew better. Graeme.
Sorry, people.
It's all right. And they proceeded to
sorry.
try and mount a case against me with absolutely no evidence, with no support from the police whatsoever. And here I am 7 years later, finally got them to admit that they're going to change all their documentation that says I've done, I don't even know what I'm supposed to have done.
So this was on false allegations fabricated by a social worker, or more than one social worker?
By more than one social worker, the actual Wanganui office.
So it was a total cover-up.
Total cover-up. They claimed the police were investigating, and that all claims of abuse, although they wouldn't specify what the abuse was or when it happened, was substantiated when I got the police file.
So the guts of your problem, how long have you been fighting?
From the time I took the child, about 7.5 years.
Okay, so your situation is that you were an innocent victim. The employees that are paid for by taxpayers' money through Child, Youth and Family, which was then Ministry of Social Development, fabricated evidence to imply or allude, which is illegal, you can't allude, that you had done something wrong, and you basically spent the last 7.5 years proving you were innocent.
Yeah, and at every opportunity they had when meeting with me, discussing it, I was writing back home to reports that I had been over the top, dangerous, threatening, intimidating.
This is to the social workers?
To the social workers, the central regional manager, the whole lot.
But you were smart enough to tape record, right?
Yes.
See, the point here is, folks, you must tape record all your conversations with authorities in New Zealand.
Absolutely.
Because they will fabricate the evidence, and I know they did it in my case, and they've done it in many cases that I've seen,
Yep.
to distort the fact, because the key performance indicators of these individuals, like the New Zealand police, for example, is the most number of, the amount of charges they can get, the amount of convictions, and of course with Child, Youth and Family, it's to remove the number of children.
Right. No bad parents, no paycheck. It's that simple.
And so you, Graeme, were obviously involved in this case?
Yeah, someone luckily gave Barry my phone number somewhat 7 years ago.
Yeah.
And Barry rang me up, and there were similarities between Barry's case and what a lot of other people said, and it seems like they said things about him that when he challenged and asked for the evidence, they wouldn't back it up. They just basically said, because someone's staff member said it, we take them at their word. And so, well, if something's been said, if someone's been accused of being bullying and intimidating, on what time did that happen, who witnessed it, and what was said or done that would give that impression? Well, I'd say, well, we can't answer that. Well, they should be able to if you're going to say it about someone. And like, from what I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong here, Barry, they even wrote to Wins suggesting that you were potentially under investigation. They said that he had warnings from the police, which he never got. So when Barry started to question it, suddenly they deemed him as bullying and intimidating, I think was the first. The story's changed over time to what they've been accusing him of.
Doesn't this point to malicious activities by the state against an individual? I mean, it seems pretty malicious to me.
Well, certainly, and see, that's the problem. When you start asking legitimate questions, which you're entitled to answers to, they'll then say, oh, that person's threatening, bullying and intimidating, to discredit you. They won't actually, when you say, actually, what we want, that's a side issue, and it didn't happen anyway, but what we want to know is, we asked you a specific question about a statement you made about us, where is the proof? And often they'll say, oh no, we're not going to answer you because now you're threatening us, or now you're bullying us, or now you're being intimidating.
But in the criminal court, you've got to actually show proof. It's the proof is the onus is on the person bringing the allegations to prove that you've done something. Was it ever going to? See, you were never charged anyway.
No. Never charged.
Well, where does the standard, Graeme, work? Because under the United Nations Civil and Political Rights, and I can't remember, it's 8 or
Section 17.
Section 17. So thanks. You're not allowed to. You have the right to have your reputation and character not being attacked.
Maybe they didn't read it.
Well, that's part of our human rights.
The problem I've found with a lot of this international stuff is when it gets down to the nitty-gritty of it, it's making others comply or having your right enforceable is where we have the issue. And in Barry's case...
Our government has signed those agreements on our behalf as the citizens.
Well,
And shouldn't it be especially most important that state organisations comply?
how do we report them for being naughty state organisations? That's the thing.
Well, that's a fundamental problem. And that's where the issue, I hear, scarily, is that some people are looking to go for lawful rebellion because they're being ruled unjustly. And there's the ability to hold these social workers to account when they write themselves out of the law needs to be changed, because the government is there to protect the citizens, but all it's doing is protecting the state.
Well, you see, there's a fundamental issue of accountability which you're touching on. And I'll give you one example of where a good idea can go very wrong. Section 444 of the SIPS Act basically says that anyone who furbishes a report for the family court, providing it's issued in, I think it says issued in good faith or not done in bad faith, you can't take a prosecution against them. Now, here's where the good and the bad of that is. Let's say I believe someone to be an unfit parent and potentially a child abuser. If I believe that's a genuine thing, then, and I put that in a report, but I don't have any hard evidence, while I'm waiting for the evidence, the child might die. That's the theory behind having it. But what you've ended up with is anyone can say anything and it's taken as a gospel truth. So the complete opposites happen. So
Worse than that, just to interject, judges, like one of the senior family court judges in New Zealand, said, I never listen to the parents, I always listen to the professionals.
That's exactly the point.
And then you can't get a fair trial.
So what's happened is that Section 444 has been misused to put children in more danger as the social workers see fit. And for example, I could say I believe this parent's a bad parent, I could believe they're a drug user, you can put all sorts of things in and not require any evidence. And that's the other thing, there's a thing called the any evidence rule, where a judge can submit anything they so choose to determine the risk to the child thereof. So things that would be hearsay, gossip and innuendo are commonplace in the family court. So what happens is social workers get so entrenched on being able to say anything and not being held to account. They then take that behaviour out of the courtroom, which is quite justifiable within the way the legislation's done. I'm not saying it's morally right, and I don't actually even believe it's legally right, but that's the rules they work by. And then they apply it in a real life situation with Barry, where they say, oh well, he's intimidating and bullying. Why? Because we think so. Whether in fact he is or isn't is irrelevant.
But then people, the damage that kind of thing is doing is breaking families apart.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And lawless behaviour by the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this has to stop. And we have to get these ministers of the Crown, like Tracy Martin, who ignores the people that are complaining, and was no better under Trolley, and it was definitely no better under Paula Benefit.
Oh, yeah.
We've got to get people to stand up to these thugs that are destroying our families in New Zealand.
Absolutely.
And how are we going to do that? I mean, you're one of the first people I've met that have actually, I understand you've been successful against Oranga Tamariki.
If you could call it successful, it still destroyed the family.
So there's no success really.
Not really.
It's
No.
a Pyrrhic victory.
But end of the day, someone's going to do something about their complaint system, because when you complain about something, someone should take you seriously and look into it.
Well, look,
Yeah.
let you talk about the complaint system, because you and
The
I
expert.
have seen the complaint system as a sham. It's a cover-up.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the best document of all, if people want to know what we're talking about, look at the Howard Broad report done in 2013, where he
10.
absolutely scathingly slated their complaint system and basically found more wrong with it than was ever right with it. And here we are in 2020, and the minister, to the best of my knowledge, still hasn't accepted his report, because his report was actually very good, except for one thing, and I had to laugh about this. Paula Benefit put in a clause in it that he couldn't look at reports that had been through the Chief Executive Advisory Panel. So he's allowed to look at the process, the input, the output and the flow through, but not the outcome. Now, why did she do that? Simple, because if you spoke to the complainants, they would have said, well, in our view, the system slanted in this favour of the social workers, because of the following things, and there's a number of them, like sometimes staff being complained about with the staff answering their complaints. Well, of course, that's never going to end well for you. And
But it's not even independent.
well, no, that's the other thing. In 2010 and 11, I went to Parliament Social Service Select Committee, and it's petition 208121, where they agreed with me that having the Ministry of Social Development running Child, Youth and Family and the Chief Executive Advisory Panel wasn't independent. Now, if that wasn't enough, Howard Broad came to the same conclusion in 2013, which is a year later. So what's happened recently is that, unfortunately, when Oranga Tamariki was opened up on April Fool's Day, nonetheless, in November 2017, the Chief Executive Advisory Panel was removed outside of the MSD and put within Oranga Tamariki, which would be akin to the police running the IPCA. Most people wouldn't stand for it, but yet we're willing to stand for the current system. Now, they say that it's independent, and from what I've been able to work out, what they mean by that is they appoint independent people to it who aren't paid by the ministry. So therefore that makes the panel independent, although the panel's run by the same people being complained about. And Howard Broad, again, in his report, had a number of criticisms, such as a narrowing of complaints, some complaints not getting it to them because up until 2017 they wouldn't look at staff affidavits as put before the family court, because they said that would be like having another family court hearing. But they then got legal advice about it and said that they can look at the accuracy of the affidavits put before the family court, but not actually relitigate them, will be the word to describe it. And that creates a problem. But here's the thing, most people don't realise it, that when you go before the panel, they have, their focus is organisationally focused. They can't look at individual staff, it's in their terms of reference. I've got the terms of reference from 2009 and 2012. So you can't complain about individual staff. Now, they say they've done that because it creates employment issues, but it also, for a lot of people, narrows down their complaints quite significantly, to the point that what goes before the panel isn't actually the substantive issues.
Well, going back a little bit further, you make a complaint at present to OT, that complaint is then sent back to the person who you've complained about.
Correct.
They respond, and you say, well, you can't respond because you're the person I'm complaining about. Then it goes to, for example, in Auckland, Julie Sutherland. So if you ever run across Julie Sutherland, she's the cover-up queen, especially for Mark Posto. she covers it up, you make a further complaint, and that goes to Wellington. Now, that'll go under... who's the general manager of the complaints department there?
Oh, I'd rather not say.
Yeah, I know who it is.
Yeah.
Come on.
And the only reason why is because when I'm too outspoken, one of the punishments, and this is probably going to happen after they see this video, is they won't let me support complainants before them. They'll say I'm naming and shaming staff, which I disagree with. If I name staff and they do something that's shameful, then the shame's on them, not on me for having pointed out what they did.
Of course it is.
And but at the moment, I have a couple of cases that I need to get before the panel with to help the people. So for that reason, I don't generally talk about staff publicly.
Okay,
No
fine.
reason, caution.
We will do that ourselves. You haven't done it.
Yep.
Okay, you haven't shamed those particular staff, but we will do it, right? Just so that the public is really aware of who these people are. But the guts of the problem is, you are not going to get anything resolved in the complaint system except cover up.
Yes.
Barry's case proves it. My case proves it.
Well, mine, you...
Your case proves it.